Now, many family historians are not structured in their research. In fact, they're all over the place, researching different phases at different times. And what I try to do in this video, which is taken from one of my presentations to beginner genealogists, is talk about the 6 phases of genealogical research and how you can approach your research in a much more logical fashion. So we'll do this as presentation basis, again based on a PowerPoint that I put together for a presentation about genealogy and how you start up in genealogy. So here we go, here's the presentation. Now this is where we start the presentation. Now all projects pretty much need some kind of foundation, especially research projects. And this is an area that many people in genealogy miss out completely. Now there's 2 parts to the foundation, and what we need to look at is part 1 is the family artifacts. And what I mean by that is receipts, photographs, wills, documents, even furniture, clocks, gifts, cameras, all that kind of stuff. We probably need to document, photograph and store somewhere. These will be lost to history if we don't take care. So we need to attach these to our family tree, and it will bring a depth to our genealogy records going forward. So that's the first step we need to take, is look at what we already have. Step 2 really is starting to talk to your relatives. And believe me, again, most genealogists wish they've done a better job of speaking to the grandparents, granduncles and things like that. So we need to do this in a structured way, ideally. There's lots of questionnaires on the internet that you can download and go through the questions or change the questions to the ones that are most appropriate to your tree. But again, this is very important to do that. If you have a chance to videotape and audio tape the interviews, that's great. But be very, very sensitive to when you're interviewing, especially our elderly relatives. And just remember as well that anything you're told still needs to be verified. My grandmother, who I loved enormously, lied about her age all through her life. Her age was incorrect on her marriage records and incorrect on her death records, and it wasn't until I'd sourced her actual birth certificate we actually knew her real age. So take very great care in what you're being told, but this again will find the foundation of your research. So we are now at the foundation, we can go to the next step. And that next step will start with you. You are the first twig in the branch of your family tree. And we'll quickly move to other branches and go to the tree, but we need to start with you. So start by documenting yourself, and then document your parents, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters, your immediate family. So now we've laid the foundation, we've started with you, and we're going to work with your immediate family. Because again, believe me, these things get lost over time. I started my research 30 years ago. A lot of the things that I wish I could go back 30 years and put into my immediate family, they're lost. My father's school reports, all that kind of stuff are lost to time. So anyway, I'll start with your immediate family, document your parents, uncle, aunts, brothers and sisters. Remember, most systems that you use will allow you to make these people private. So even if you're going to share your tree, you can make sure that family members that you don't want to be shared, you can make private going forward. And here is where we start branching out. So now we've done our immediate family, we can do our close and extended family. Your grandparents' lines, their brothers and sisters, your cousins, nieces and nephews. So they need to be done with the same great care as you would do for your immediate family. Again, we're interviewing people, looking at architects. Now, this will start getting very complicated very quickly. You'll have now quite a number of people in your tree. This is where we'll start to look at what kind of tools we can help us, and there's many available. We won't go into this on this particular short video, but I will leave some connections in the comments below. So now we have our family, the people we know, our extended family, our immediate family, we've laid a foundation. And now we'll get to doing research that most people really want to get to grips with. And the first part of research will be our near ancestors. And our near ancestors is what I like to call people within the census era. Now this will vary a little bit between countries. In England, the first real census was 1841, which was close enough to 200 years ago. In America, some federal and state censuses go back even earlier. But what we can do is we'll have often a treasure trove of information here. We'll have somebody's parents and siblings, we'll have their spouse and children, and then we'll see them retire and their grandparents. We'll look at censuses typically every 5 to 10 years that we can see how they move through their community. We'll have job records, we'll have birth, marriage and death records. Civil registration, for instance, started in England in 1837. So now we can paint this picture, and this is a timeline I use a lot to do my near ancestor research, because then I can visualize what I'm doing. And again, I made a separate video about this and it will be in the comments below. But near ancestor research is where we normally start our key research methodology. We'll be using tools, we'll do a lot of online work, we may even visit some archives. So we'll do that and then we'll start moving back in time. When we go back beyond the census era to a period 200 to 400 years ago, things start getting a little bit more complicated. There's not the civil government records or even federal or state records that will help us do our research. So we're going to have to look at different areas. And this is where our research can get very, very interesting. Church records go back often to the 15th century. We can look at for church records for our family. There'll be probates and wills for people who owned land. There may be land records and deeds as well to go with that probate, especially in the US where a lot of people own land around this stage. Now, normal DNA matching, we're reaching the limits here of what we can match with a normal ancestor tree, but maybe we can use Y or mitochondrial DNA to look for a family line. That doesn't help us nailing down a relationship, but maybe we can find relatives that way. Court records as well. I found some of our relatives in the Old Bailey, unfortunately, or criminal court. And then around about 200 to 400 years ago, we will see some immigration, not so well documented as it within the census era, but we can still get to it. We still will need to spend a lot of time on this. Maybe we'll find one record or two records, start bringing things together, but this is where we need to start validating our research. So now we've gone near to far ancestors, and now we'll do and tackle the most difficult level of our ancestors, our distant ancestors. So looking at our distant ancestors now, we're really starting to dig into the past. Over 400 years ago, I think records may be in Latin, they may not be in a language that we're familiar with. Certainly many records in England are no longer in English. Church records are often in Latin. But again, church records may be available, there may be some legal documents. Again, we may be able to tie it to Y or mitochondrial DNA to see a family line go through here. Local regional university and other archives now we're going to look at. Often these are now no longer digitized. You will need to visit them or ask somebody to visit them on your behalf, although digitization is becoming very, very quickly abounding across all universities and archives. Digitization again doesn't solve a lot of problems because, like a lot of interpretation of documents, the digitization often is incorrect. Here we'll also find published genealogies for primary families. So if your family is a key family, you may find published genealogy around that family. But always trust what your own records tell you. Don't trust other people's family trees. You'll need to verify and validate. Just because a genealogy is published doesn't mean say it's correct, and doesn't actually mean say you're connected with it. And then finally, there are lots of societies and studies, one name studies that will take you back in time. There are lots of societies that deal with particular families or particular areas for these distant ancestors, but it takes a lot of time. And what we do find with these distant ancestors as we look back in time, due to naming conventions, there may be many people in the same area with the same name, and that will be very confusing. There was no formal adoption around this time, so people may have taken in family children or other relatives and just simply changed their name. So again, can be very confusing. It will take a lot of time, and often we'll need to collaborate with other genealogists to get to our distant ancestors. Okay, that's the 6 different phases of a structured research methodology for family history research. So let's just really quickly recap the different phases. Phase number 1 is laying the foundation, which is in 2 parts. Let's look at our artifacts that we take with us and make part of our research, and let's interview our relatives as much as we can. Then we start looking at our immediate family. We start with ourselves. We're the first twig of the first branch in our family tree. So let's start with us. We are the home person. And we'll look at our immediate family, people we know and we interact with. Step number 2 will be looking at our close relatives, people that we know of. Perhaps we don't see a lot, maybe we swap Christmas cards. But again, close relatives are key to having a very structured family tree. We may want to interview them. And again, as I said earlier, confidentiality is key here. A lot of these people are still living, so let's make sure we don't publish people's details inadvertently. Let's make sure they're kept private. Now, step number 4 is where we start our true research in the period that I call the census period, which is up to about 200 years ago, depending which country and where we're looking at. There is lots of records available here, lots of people researching these areas, and lots more records are being released every day. There's billions of records of this period, for instance, in Ancestry. Then we go to the period 2 to 400 years ago, our far ancestors. A lot less records here, but still quite a few church records, and maybe we can still use a little bit of DNA. Then we move to our distant ancestors. This is where it starts to get really tough. Anything over than 400 years ago, languages may be different, records may be very difficult to find. It's very difficult to cross-reference your research. So you have to be very diligent here when we're looking at distant ancestors. But if we follow this approach and remember the type of research we need to do at each stage, it really will help us to have a very structured, robust and accurate tree. So thanks for watching. Again, I hope that was a useful video for you all, so you can figure out a structured way again to really do your research in different time periods and look at what's available for you at different time periods. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please like the video. It would be great if you subscribe to my channel. I try and put up 2 or 3 videos out a month. In fact, my next video will probably be about focus areas of your research, so look out for that. In the meantime, happy researching and have a great day.